Hello folks, as promised we've got a DNT B40 base station here which looks just like the M40 but is longer and has feet on the bottom and a power supply built into the back. And it's not a 13.8 volt power supply, it's a 12 volt power supply which we're going to overhaul. I might do the radio first, but I'll be mindful to do work on the set. We won't touch his legs. We'll take the opportunity to pat test this as well at the end. So I think we'll work on the radio first and then probably work on his power supply later. I'm hoping I don't have to order any parts for that. I think I've only done 2 others. I've seen 3 others. 3 others ever. So we've got a plug that's legal. As in the shrouded pins. It's got a 3 amp fuse in it, which is correct. So that's okay. But we'll run it on the power supply if that's possible. He's also sent what should be the factory original microphone, but needs some repair, he says, or a replacement. I think the best thing to do with this is to put one of the high quality DIN plugs we do. I don't know whether that shows up on the picture, I can't see it well on the monitor. We use that as a contrast. It's been taped together and it's got a moulded plug. I wonder, I'm intrigued actually as to whether the screened pin is the correct screened pin. Now, is this a moulded type or is it? I'm just intrigued because I can just imagine somebody doing something like this and using a lead off another mic. And of course, they're all different, aren't they? The pinouts, the way they're wired. If I can pull it apart, that is. Or is it a moulded one? Nah, I can't pull it apart. So we'll see what we can do as it is. So I'm going to need to open it up because we're going to have to either overhaul the power supply immediately or run it on our external power supply at 12 volts. So for people who like turning scrap chassis into workers, the word of warning here is you think, oh, I could mend this base station with a M40. There's 1 or 2 differences in the component values because they're intended for a 13.8 volt power supply and this is intended for a 12 volt power supply and still achieve 4 watt output, which they do. They also crystal filtered as standard, so we did that super tuned version which had been reworked in the UK in 1982 when I've no doubt that sales of M40 basic standard ones were slow because they were bleedover boxes, and I'm sure word soon got round that that was the case. So there you go. So let's hope it hasn't got any modifications. So we've got to make sure we've got 2200. They were Nicky Cons. Oh, Nicky Den. Haha. That's to catch you out, isn't it? Because they're Hong Kong, these sets, aren't they? Yeah. You do get a built-in speaker. I don't think it was a clever, compact concept. And I have totally rebuilt these power supplies in the past where they've needed a lot of work. Now this gentleman is the gentleman who owns the PE Ranger, which we've had in for 9 months. It's a 7812. It's an L7812, and I think there's more than 1 amp that. Yes, so there's our crystal filter. So it hasn't got the modifications that super tuned one has, and conversely it isn't as basic as the normal M40. But they're just as complex to set up, and they still suffer from dry joints, but being a base station, not being flung around in a car, and constant temperature changes, I would think that they are more reliable. So, we're going to power this up. Probably between the crocodile clip on the volume control there and chassis. But it needs to be really on the... That's not going to make any difference, is it? I was going to say it's still going to put juice back into the capacitors, but I'm sure that's going to be alright. So we're set for 12 volts. So plug in our test equipment speaker. That sounds dreadful. If this mic works enough for us to test with, we'll run with it. Otherwise I'll use our DNT test mic. And the answer is it does work enough to do that. Turn the volume down, that's a horrible sound. You've still got the power input choke. Now you'd thought if this was the base station version, they've gone to the trouble of putting a crystal filter in for the base station version and all the different components, that they wouldn't need to put the choke in there. You'd think they'd have just wire linked that, because that's to take impulse interference out from car engines. Oh well, good for them. Right, we'll get our clipboard and let's see what it does at this point. So we're running this at 12.5 volts. Now, I'm going to tune everything. When we sort the power supply out, it might be a slightly different voltage, but I might just have to touch one of the adjustments to make sure that it's either brought up or brought down in power. It's not going to be far out. If we get 4 watts on 12.5 volts, well, it's going to be pretty close and it won't need much adjustment. So I'm going to just make at 12.5 volts. So here goes. We're on channel 20. Press transmit. Switch picture in picture on. We'll find the right button. And are we on low power? No. It's like that, is it? 1.7 watts. on channel 40, 1.05 watts. On channel 1, 1.1 watt. Current consumption 750 milliamps. That's a lot for that output. And low power, we'll just that was a flawed test because we were on channel 1. Do that again. We'll just do low power first. We are at 90 milliwatts. Let's go back to high power. 800 milliamps. Deviation for what it's worth on this test set. 1, 2. Just get our monitor receiver on because I'm getting nothing showing. Oh. It's on 28.285. Hasn't been altered, do you think? $28.355. Oh, I thought we could all have done without this. I'll switch it off. And I've got to scrap ordinary DNT. I have. Well, it wasn't that ordinary, it's a super tuned one. Let's just look at the wiring colours. I say that because am I not right that with the general purpose synthesizer these use, you could just swap a couple of wires around and you're on 28 megs. So they're the wire. That's the wiring to the display. That's the wiring to the display. So I'm barking up the wrong tree. So unless there's a data line out, we've got 10.24, 15.226, 11.68. Well, no wonder he sent it in for service. So I've got one of those, you know, I do some shopping for some old ladies. I'd say they're from church, but I mean, this one's 94. She's obviously not been for a very long time. Got carers in 4 times a day. She lives at Grantham, 7.5 miles away. She's just phoned me before I started this. Will I go and get her a carton of milk? You know what they say, if you want something doing, ask a busy person. So I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to drive 7 miles. The nearest place to her, she normally has me shop at Marks and Spencer's, which is hurts me as a Yorkshireman on their pricing. But I'm not going to do that because that's well out of the way. I'm going to go to Tesco Local. On Harrowby Lane at Grantham, and I'm going to get her some milk. I'm going to take it to her a mile away. She's just off New Beacon Road, and I come back here, and it will have taken me an hour and 15 plus miles, and I still have to do the same level of work. And I'm not complaining, it's just what you do. I'd like to do the same under that wiring, but I daren't. So we're just going to look as to whether there's any damaged tracks or dry joints. And these sets we're doing with the mobiles were playing at dry joints even when they were new out of the box. You've got 1 or 2 of those. So I'm thinking along the lines, it's either the channel selector switch or it's a data line out on the chip. I do have these in stock. I was sensible in buying parts when back in the 90s. And the good thing is, whatever price they were when I bought them is the price they are now. This isn't eBay look rare. So I think we'll go down all that. There's just 1 or 2 dry joints in addition to what I want to do here. To be honest, it doesn't look messed with. This in the two-way radio trade, when they do this of their own, the radio does it on its own without being made to do something. It's known as frequency hopping. And it's embarrassing on business radios if it frequency hops onto somebody else's frequency. really don't like the way that's been trimmed, so I'll just redo that. I don't like that Mr. Blobby there. So we'll just try and do some of these on the channel selector switch without burning the wiring. So half of the wafers in the channel selector switch are doing the display and the other half are doing the actual frequency. For those of you who don't know how these channel selector switches work, you've different wafers. I think these are the display ones, and we know that works. Right, we'll switch it on. Power supply back on. I need to hook it back up, won't I? It can be a faulty channel selector switch. It can be a faulty phase lock loop chip. It's working. That's it. Go to the frequency counter so you can see. So we're on channel 20, 27, 79, 116. So I bet you it'll still sounds awful. Let's just dial in that on receive. Now there was a wicked dry joint to one of those, so I was pretty sure. As you can hear, that sound dreadful. That's why you need scrap chassis. We've got a Harvard H400. The next set after this is a boxed Midland 2001. But after that, we've got a set of mine, and I wanted to, because I've not shown what's called the CB240 chassis. It's a Hong Kong chassis, and it's the same people who made those Harvard handhelds, the 40 channel handhelds, and the Harrier ones and the Alba ones, and it's the same circuit. Well, he has a stretch, and it's very similar to this. They're not brilliant sets, and they've got atrocious squelch, but I haven't shown one for ages. So you've got the Eurosonic Euro 1, the Eurosonic Euro 2, the Harvard 400M, and the Alba CBM1, which has slider controls, which certainly made it different, but at that time television sets had slider controls. So I emailed a couple of our trade customers, and one of them came up with the goods, and he sent me a scrap chassis. I've got a bottom lid, and he's got a top lid. Got some knobs that just about fit, And so we're going to piece that back together and see whether we can get it to work. I'm looking forward to doing that. And you know, they're only an average set, or probably even less than an average set, but I just wanted one to show you. I think I did most of these before I was doing the videos. Okay, so let's see what the sensitivity is on receive. Now that we are more or less on frequency, and remember, you've got 10.24, you've got transmit, you've got receive, so you know, a lot of adjustments. Squelch. Are you joking? It's not that deaf, is it? No, it's not that deaf. It's not in DX, is it? Okay. That's the attenuator. So let's put this on the poltergeist again. Now I had to move things, looking for bits of his Ranger. I've lost part of the case, but I'll just simply have to give him part of mine if I can't find his. So, where are we? We are at 2528 microvolts with 12 dB. We are at 77 microvolts. 24 microvolts. And will it ever do 20? It will actually. It will do it at 78 microvolts. Squelch. On full. This is one of the weaknesses on these sets. Is 24 microvolts. And we can't. It's not possible. 2779. 116, so it's virtually spot on. Right, so now we'll look at these transmit powers again, because of course with it being 28 megs, I'm surprised it was even locked at that. So this one's got a jolly good VCO. We've got totally different power to what I've got there. So let's have a look. Got 3.5 watts. On channel 40, got 3 watts. On channel 1, got 3.9 watts. And on low power, go back to channel 20. ,320 milliwatts. And that current consumption is in reality 1.12. Right. still on channel 20. If I still got all this on my clipboard. No, probably got it lurking here then. Okay, into trans. Oh, we'll see what we can get deviation doing anything. Wallow, 1.8. So the first thing we need to do is set 10.24. Because that receiver is so bad that I think something's amiss. I think it's pin 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. .23. Nine one. .2399 will do me. Now then, when we go into transmit now, it'll be off frequency because I've altered the first of the references. So you've got 3 on this. Not easy to set up. You need 2 signal generators. Right. So go into transmit and I'll show you the frequency counter. So we're now 2779152. So we'll just transmit. Oh, I don't want it that accurate, I want it up a little fraction from there. That'll do me. Now the receive. We'll take the tone off. We'll get the second signal generator, this little Chinese thing. I'll plug it in. Just plug that in like that. I would if the adapter was in one piece. So we want 10.695, which is what we've got. I just want anything to give me an output. And because we've been moving things on here, there's always a danger of moving things. Right, can you hear that musical note? Well, that looks right. So it does sound on frequency now. Put the oscilloscope on. Try and set the detector. I know I normally do transmit first. I just want to get to the bottom of this get receive. Well, that looks right and sounds right. Just have a quick check of these IFs. I just can't understand why it's so deaf. Go over to the cyanide meter. Well, there's something wrong with it. That's too deaf to be just out of adjustment. So we've got it to what? 43 microvolts for 12 dB. It's actually worse now that the detector's work is at the right level. So there you go. So that's going to be quite fun to try and diagnose. Most likely it'll be a duff transistor. But you notice nothing in the antenna line. Don't think it's going to be the relay. I'll just no, it's always coming back to the same level. And the DX local switch certainly works. So it's no longer off frequency, which of course is what it was also sounding awful with. Just turn the signal generator off. It does sound awful, doesn't it? Just run through this transmission and I'll go and deal with Mrs. Whatsit. spot on as it was. Not spot on. So that's 4 watts. Channel 1, 4 watts. Channel 40, 4 watts. Okay folks, where have I put my pen? Low power. Channel 20. 300 and something, 340 milliwatts. So we'll just adjust. There we go. 400 milliwatts. Back to full power. 1.29 amps. Check the meter. Can't remember whether it's that one or the other one. It should be in the centre of the red zone, and it was in the centre of the red zone, and it still is. Okay, well we're going to leave it at that and come back to it much later. Got some organ work to do in between. So it's alright saying to myself, well, it's kind of half done, we've got the power supply to rebuild, but more importantly, we've got to find out why this set's as deaf as a post.